couple of our critics are with me now in relation to the Environmental Protection Agency story. David Ford, leader of the Alliance Party, and Daithí McKay of Sinn Féin. You're both very welcome. David Ford, no EPA for Northern Ireland because basically we're too small to require one. That seems to be the argument.
No, I think the issue is no EPA because the DUP backbenchers didn't want an EPA. There's absolutely no reason why there shouldn't be a specific agency for Northern Ireland. Whether or not we've got a small population, we have the same need for independence from the government machine, which is the problem within the EHS as it operates at the moment.
And Daithí McKay and Sinn Féin have been calling for this, but are you willing to suffer the consequences, if you like, when you have people in the farming lobby who are saying we don't want one?
Yeah, well, we are going to work for the environment and for what benefits the environment and environmental agencies. And it's quite clear today that all the environmental NGOs are for the creation of an independent EPA. And it is vitally important that we have a situation here in terms of environmental governance where political representatives, including yourselves, cannot interfere in terms of environmental governance, in terms of fines and in terms of the wider issues around the prosecution of those involved in environmental crime.
Do you think the issue, though, will go away now to some extent? You said there will be a review in 2011. Short of a different party taking the Environment Ministry, this issue isn't going to be forced through. So are you just going to simply have to sit back and see how her new regulations get on?
Well, one area where I tried to question her earlier and she didn't have an answer is the fact that we have a High Court ruling on a judicial review of the Northern Area Plan that there must be independent environmental advice to the planning service. Now, whilst she's talked about making EHS slightly more separate from the department, she has emphasised the fact that it will continue to report to her as Minister and will be able to ask questions within the Environment Committee within the Assembly. So it is clearly not an independent body as European legislation requires. Now, the Minister didn't answer my question on that because she said there was an appeal and it was still sub judice, but it is something she is going to have to consider. And we're in the bizarre position at the moment that nothing can happen on any area plan because we haven't resolved that issue, and we might need an independent EPA to resolve that issue. So it certainly hasn't gone away. I'm not waiting till 2011. I want to see something a lot quicker than that.
Daithí McKay, what about her broad argument, which was that the restoration and devolution, the fact the Environment Committee is playing the role it is, to some extent obviated the need for an independent agency because you can hold this new Northern Ireland Environmental Agency to account through the structures you've got?
Well, I think that neglects the fact, Mark, and John Woods from Friends of the Earth outlined it this morning, that this environmental EPA will be headed up by a board which would appear before the committee and will be there to be scrutinised by the committee, the Minister and the Assembly in the same way as any other organisation. So that scrutiny and that accountability would still be there even with the existence of an independent EPA.
And what is lost, though, in all of this? I mean, we are a relatively small population here. You can keep a focus on it here at Stormont, but what do you think are the big things that are lost without having an independent agency to guarding the environment?
Well, the big loser at the end of the day is the environment. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to have something in place here which ensures that environmental crime is punished and that all the different agencies, and I'll quote a local example in terms of Daithí's policy in regard to lignite in North Antrim, the door is still wide open for the exploitation of the environment in that particular area, and we need an independent agency to hold that governmental department to account, and that is not in existence at the moment.
And David Ford, is it the legal route that you think has to be followed or at least answered sooner rather than later in this question over whether or not European legislation requires independent advice?
That is clearly one issue which will have to be addressed, but there are wider issues. I mean, just this afternoon I had a positive response from the Minister to a question about using wind power more, which is clearly one of the issues where we have an economic advantage on this island with some of the best winds in Europe to generate electricity in a green way. So on the one hand, we have the Minister being positive about things like that. On the other hand, she is failing to maximise the opportunities to get proper environmental governance, to bring in bodies like the Rivers Agency into the current EHS structure and give it that degree of independence, which means that we will see regulation being done in a free and fair way. And I actually believe groups like farmers would benefit by having an independent board rather than having EHS accountable to the Minister. They have a much better chance of getting a balanced and considered view over what we need than we've got under the current system, and we're just not changing the current system enough.
Is this a big issue, or will it just simply be a footnote in the first sort of term of this devolution?
I think, judging by the response which I have had, and my colleagues have had, and I'm sure other MLAs have had, postcards in from people who are concerned about this issue, letters and emails. I think it is one of the biggest issues, and I think it is not being seen as being tackled properly.
David Ford and Daithí McKay, thank you both very much indeed.